All right, good afternoon from Southwest Michigan. I'm Josh Haas, current vice chair for the Hawk Migration Association of North America. I just want to welcome everybody to another in the series of our Lunch and Learn. So thank you all for being here. Just want to go through a few administrative things before I turn it over to our executive director, Bill Giuliani, who will introduce Brian Wargo today. So we're really excited to have Brian with us. Part of that excitement comes from what a great partner and current board member we have in Brian Wargo. So we're really excited to have him today. But before we get too much further along, I do want to point out in Zoom, just as a friendly reminder, we are recording the session so that we can put this on the HMANA news website once this is finished. In addition to that, if you look at your upper right-hand corner of Zoom, you'll see a little area where it says view, and you can set your view up so that it looks the way you would like it to look. So if you want to see more of the screen share on, more real estate of your screen, you can set things up in such a way to make that happen. In addition to that, at the very bottom, please do us a favor and open up that chat window and engage with us. We love to use the chat. In fact, it's really your only way to engage with us, as everyone will stay muted. So please open up that chat, say hello, tell us where you're calling in from. And again, most importantly, use that to enter any questions that you have that come up during Brian's presentation. Having said that, I think I'll turn it over to Bill, who will introduce Brian for the day. We'll walk through the presentation, and then at the end, we'll save time to walk through all of the questions, as much of the questions as possible, and look to close by about 1 p.m. Eastern. So, Bill, I'll turn it over to you to introduce Brian.
Great, thanks, Josh. Yeah, one more thing on the chat. I'll be monitoring that, and unless there's some type of emergency, I guess, we'll hold the questions until about 12:45 or so, and then we'll unleash all of the questions. I'll relay them to Brian. So thanks again for coming to our Lunch and Learn series, our next installment here. Brian has done a lot of great things. We were just looking at one of his newest books here before this. As you can see there on the slide, he's one of our directors on the board, does a lot of other things. Interestingly for us, I think, Brian has 3 degrees, graduate degrees in physics of all things for one, and science education in another. And he's a real fanatic, I guess, when it comes to data analysis, and that's really helpful to us. And he's going to tell us a little bit about that today. So without any more, I'll leave it to Brian.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. When they say you write a book, if you put an equation, for every equation you put in the book, you have the sales, right? So we're going to do lots of equations today and lots of data, and hopefully we won't have people dropping off. But a couple things I'll mention about myself is I'm the Eastern Flyway editor for Hawk Migration Studies. And that's really what we're going to focus on today, is how do we make these, state of the raptor reports. And that ties in with 2 of the other things that I do. I chair the Education and Conservation Committee for HMANA, and also the big one, which is the Data Committee. And just so you know, while I do like numbers and analyze them quite often, I'm one of you. I count birds and hawks in particular. So I'm the president of the Allegheny Plateau Audubon Society right there in Pennsylvania. I'll be using them as the primary example today, because if I say something wrong, they'll yell at me, and your site doesn't have to yell at me, right? If I get something wrong. I'm also a Saturday counter at the Allegheny Front Hawk Watch. All right. So
one other thing, Brian, before, I want to make sure everyone recognizes that, you were instrumental in getting our Junior Hawk Watch program going. And so we're thankful for that as well.
And if you don't have a Junior Hawk Watcher program at your site yet, you can just email HMANA, and we can certainly help you facilitate that new program. All right, I'm going to give a real quick plug right away to Hawk Migration Studies. Let's say that you're not a supporter of HMANA. Well, it turns out you don't actually have to be to get the Hawk Migration Studies Journal. It is the official journal of the Hawk Migration Association of North America, and I highly encourage you to read these. If you are on the Eastern Flyway and you count hawks, You know, we honor you. We put a snippet in for every site, every issue. So I'm going to tell you how we put that together. But again, just go to our HMANA site and you can read the digital versions of this absolutely outstanding journal. All right. For those of you that know me, you know that I play with numbers and I analyze data, and a lot of data. And I do this for all the sites in the Eastern Flyway. I've gone through this before, but let me go ahead and just remind you that there's about 200 sites that we're normally dealing with. I probably am in contact with 100 of those. So I'm just going to use the Allegheny Front Hawk Watch. This is small. I get it. We're going to go through these in detail in a little bit here. But what I want you to notice is that, and if you have a site, more than likely I've sent one of these for your site that analyzed your data. I've got years going down here. I've got hours. I've got all the different species here. There's bald eagle, and then broad wings, and then our total for all the years. And then I have pie graphs that tell us your distribution of birds that you're seeing and what your average is. And then I make graphs, statistical graphs, a little program I made that shows us standard deviations and your regression lines for all the different species, the common species. And if you haven't received one of these and you would like one for your site so you can see what's going on, just let me know. Just send me a quick email and I'll get your data analyzed. All right. I not only do this for each individual site, because a lot of people are wondering, well, how do you actually write, you know, the state of the raptors for the flyway? Well, first of all, I break it up into 4 sections. We've got the north, the mid-north, the mid-Atlantic, and then the south. And then there's other hawk sites throughout the country, and we have other flyway editors that are working on that, and they have their process. For mine, what I do is I take every bit of data that we have for that particular spring or fall. And so this is the mid-Atlantic. I'll point out a few here. There's the Allegheny Front, which I'll be referencing quite a lot. But you also notice one of the big things when you're working with data, a lot of people, they see numbers and their eyes glaze over. So let me give you a hint. Whenever you're working with numbers, use colors. It's a different part of the brain and it stimulates different parts of your thinking. So for instance, notice dark green, like a green light, really good. Red, maybe not so good. Okay, yellow somewhere in between there. Notice ashland nature. Look at how many broad wing or black vultures they have and turkey vultures, along with bald eagles. Notice that I can scan through all of the numbers of all the different sites here right away, and that green catches my eye. That allows me to point to these things when I'm writing, right? So I encourage any of you that work with data, if you're not incorporating color and you can do it constructively, do it. It's really helpful. You'll notice right away, you could see Hawk Mountain in Pennsylvania. That is a powerhouse. Look, 1,080 hours. And I can look straight down here and I could see no one's going to top that. So we have gradients of green. And then what I can do is use spreadsheets. And spreadsheets are like those of you that went to school years ago and you had to do the same problem over and over again, and you wish you had a robot. We have that robot now. They're called spreadsheets. And if you learn and you can make friends with spreadsheets, they can do most of the work for you. Just have to program a little. But look what I can do. This is a year or two old, but since I've been the Eastern Flyway editor, I think this is my 6th or 7th year, probably 6th. I can look at all the data from the years prior and I could say, look, 2019 is a big improvement from 2018. See how it goes from yellow, and the year before, 2018 was red. Right away, I know that, we're much better. That red means out of those 5 years that I have listed there, 2018 was the smallest number. And then I do little things like take the average. And then I also give a percentage, like 100% would be an average season. So this 102% tells me, well, we're about average for 2019 when I analyze. And just so you know, I'm always a year behind. We just got done with the 2021 fall season. The issue comes out a year later. So I have a year to do all this. And you might be thinking, that's a long time. Well, it's a lot of work. So we really do need that time. All right, let me go on. I can then, and I won't bore you too much with these. And if you want copies of these, we can get those to you. But anyhow, I can also do this for several sites. You can't read this up here, but this makes sense to me. Up top here, I have 3 ridge sites. I am going to take a sample because I don't need every single site. If a site just comes on board and we don't have contiguous data for that particular site, we don't want to mix it in with the sites that we already have that are reliable and consistent if we're trying to find trends in a particular area along a ridge site or something like that. So I might sample the most consistent or geographically diverse sites so that I can end up seeing a general trend. And I don't know what that was about. But anyhow, you can see for the ridge sites, we can see that, and I know this is going to be hard, but I have, well, you might be, if you have your chat on, we might not see it. So let me go pick a different one. Notice I'll just pick on bald eagles here. Notice you can see this line, even from far away, even small, bald eagle numbers are increasing, which I think most of us knew, but we have to use our numbers. All right, let me get out of these technical graphs and go to a page that we're all familiar with. HawkCount.org. This is probably the bread and butter of how we're able to know what everyone else is doing. Keep in mind, we used to have to do green sheets and we'd send those in. And by the way, we did another presentation about the development of HawkCount.org. This is going to be like an advanced session. But keep in mind, 1999, 2000, that season, Jason Sodergren essentially starts this HawkCount, wonderful database that we can upload instead of having either to phone them in or print on a piece of paper and send our numbers in. So now everyone can go to everyone else's site and see what you're doing. And this is just a typical screenshot. If you've never been to HawkCount.org, get there. That is, if you're a hawk watcher, even if you're not a hawk watcher, you should. I mean, it's just a great, fun thing to look at what people are getting for the day. It's like our social media for hawk watchers. The new social media, not so good. A lot of depression with that, a lot of anxiety that it creates. HawkCount is nothing but gold. Now, the big story of today is numbers are going to tell us the stories of what's going on here. And I'm just going to use a few examples. And this is Allegheny Front again, so I'm not using anyone else's data. I'm just going to click and I'm going to make that same slide a little bit bigger. And you'll notice that I have an arrow pointing to one of the values. So on, if we look over here, we can see on March 5th, we have this number 21. That doesn't seem like a lot, but if I go up, I can see golden eagles. 21 golden eagles is a pretty good day, right? So I can already start thinking of the story of what's happening there. Now, I was there that day, I was the counter, but when I look at other people's numbers, I get a similar story by looking at their numbers because I know I can end up looking at the text that they've also put along with their numbers. And in my mind, I'm already like, I know who's going to be up there. If Golden Eagles are coming through, I know Joe Sabo's going to be there. Paul Fritz, if he can. Kevin George and Tom and Janet are going to be up there. I already have a story developing, and I already kind of know what the wind is going to be like. And then I'm going to look at those numbers, and it says, oh, near freezing temperatures. Imagine that, hawk watchers in freezing weather. And the winds are coming out of the southeast. That's a great wind for us, and they're going to get strong. I then look at these numbers down here. These numbers right here tell me the story. A lot of adults coming through, and they start at about 11 Eastern Standard Time. All right. And they taper off towards 4. And that's typical of the Allegheny Front. Every site's a little bit different. And then I can also look at what other birds were there and so on. Okay. Again, if you're not using HawkCount, make sure you get on there. And right below this, if you scroll down, you'll be able to see more detail. Air pressure. I know there's a few people out there that look at air pressure as the most important thing for the migration. I kind of agree. When I see numbers like 30.21 and then 30.37 the next hour, that is an incredible high pressure. That seems a little fast. It also makes me wonder if my environmental unit was working properly, but notice no birds, no birds. I already know the story. And by the way, this will have it for every hour. Here's the story. I guarantee there's a bunch of hawk watchers sitting on a hill. They know with an east wind, they know the eagles are coming. And this is what it looks like. I took this picture. This is Paul Fritz and a couple of our other regulars. I guarantee Paul is sitting there just dreaming away, waiting for these eagles to come through. And he's thinking, oh, I bet you there's going to be a special golden eagle coming along. And there's a little variant of golden eagles, the Barthemial, I think is how you pronounce it, variant. And I know that because Paul normally carries this unbelievably beautiful book by Brian Wheeler, Birds of Prey of Northeast. In there, he talks about this particular variant and how rare it is. But if you know Paul, and by the way, if you ever see Paul, I guarantee he's got this book on him. He always carries it with him. I don't know about you guys, but I carry my books all the time too. Now, some of you already know that's not enough to start jumping to conclusions, because if you waited, I took this picture. All the pictures on this presentation are mine unless I point them out. This is a good one for me, by the way. But if you give it a couple more seconds and you get the right lighting, you realize that was not a golden eagle at all. It was a bald eagle, right? So let's go over a couple rules that we can learn, or a couple lessons that we can learn. First of all, let's understand that pictures can be deceiving. So we got to be careful whenever you see a picture. Remember, hawk watchers, you show me a picture of an accipiter, and yeah, I got it down to 3. It's either a sharp shin or Cooper's or northern goshawk. And I have my guesses, but I think most of you realize pictures aren't enough. They can really be deceiving. We have to be careful. So keep that note in mind. And the second note, keep that skepticism. That's important. Keep that skepticism whenever you are using pictures, and also keep that skepticism whenever we're using numbers, right? Numbers seem like it's cut and dry, it's objective. It's not. I mean, look at this picture. Look at the long tail. It almost looks like a golden, but it's not. So angles matter. And so let's all be careful when people are using pictures and saying, this is exactly what happened. Well, just be careful. All right. Anyhow. So another thing that I want to just point out, and I call it lesson 3. I ended up shuffling these slides around, so I don't remember if it's lesson 3 or not, whatever. But numbers can miss interesting stuff. So look at this golden eagle, and you could tell this is a golden eagle. He doesn't have white armpits. He's got, some white in the bottom of the primaries here and so on. But notice he's got a quill sticking out. I think I've shown this picture to some of you before, but look, that doesn't show up in our numbers. So numbers, well, I'm a numbers guy. Understand numbers are leaving some of the data out, that qualitative data, and that complements our quantitative, right? As do those little notes that we put in HawkCount.org. So I think that's a porcupine needle sticking out. I could be wrong, but that's what I think it is. All right, let's get to some graphics, because those of you that are, in the Northeast, the golden eagles are just one of those sites that's just so interesting. So we talk about it a lot. But now I'm going to show you, how do I make sense of all of the numbers with our golden eagles? And so I made a graphic for this. Imagine that. I'm going to make a lot of graphics. And the reason why we make graphics is because I can see one bird here, and I understand what that is. But if I want to talk about a lot of numbers all at the same time, you really have to use graphics. If you don't use graphics, you're going to glaze over. All right, so this is a particular graph that I made, and this is the single high counts for golden eagles in the Eastern Flyway. Eastern Flyway, very big swath, right? And you can see down here, I have abbreviations. Franklin Mountain. Those of you that are familiar with golden eagles probably have heard Franklin Mountain. Allegheny Front, I'm going to use an X here, an orange X. This 20 right here means out of all the big days of counting golden eagles, this ranks as 20th, the 20th highest with 45. That's interesting and everything. But look, I can get a little bit more depth. The time that you spend in your graphics can actually save you time later on. If I need to, if people were quizzing me about when was the 5th biggest day or whatever, I go to my graphic and I can figure it out. I'm going to zoom in right on this bottom part right here. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in. So here we go. Look for the blue block and the X again. Here's my blue block. Here's my X. Again, 20th spot, we're tied, 45 golden eagles each, Allegheny Front, Franklin Mountain. But you couldn't tell on that other graphic until I zoomed in. I actually have it sequentially with the date. See how that is right on that October, November line? That's when Franklin Mountain had their big day. Allegheny Front, second week of November. All right. Things like this can allow me to, I don't have an encyclopedic mind, but if I have my graphics, I can find data pretty quickly and help people find whatever answer they're looking for. Let's zoom back out now. So now you can see we are just down here, and I think you can see the little tick marks. This is January of 04, January of 05. It changed them from January for whatever reason, but let's not worry about it. All right. We can see that Franklin Mountain then gets 71 golden eagles. All right. And that's back in what, 2000. That's actually 2005. I don't know why it's doing a day before, but whatever. 71 golden eagles in a day. That's never going to be broken, right? So life goes on. Allegheny Front has 61, and then we get a 74 day. And Allegheny Front, we're really excited about having the record for the East Coast. And then you look up here, all the way up there, Franklin Mountain gets 128 golden eagles. That's going to stand forever, I think, right? Hopefully it won't, but either way, good for them. Really a lot of fun just to look and play with the data. And notice we've had this day right here, 59 day. A couple of years ago, I had that day, but I also want to be able to show you like new up and comers here. Bald Eagle Mountain, their first year, they get 3 of the top 20 biggest days for golden eagles. Tells you right away we should be watching that site, right? That's an exciting site. All right. Here's all of the big days. I don't remember how many I put in here, but a lot. You could see your favorite site, and I put some of the highest sites right up here. Right, you could see golden eagle numbers are kind of going up with big days, right? That doesn't mean golden eagle populations are necessarily going up, but that does make you think. So are the populations going up? Here's one way to do it. You could connect the dots. But be careful. If you connect the dots, you end up with this blurry screen, right? I can see, like, I'll just use orange again. Notice eagles undulate up and down over the years. These are just the big days, right? Or wait, these are total fall numbers. I'm sorry. This is a mess. So sometimes I don't want the actual data. I want regression lines. And if I just look at regression lines, I can see for the Allegheny Front, which is orange, over the years, the golden eagle numbers have been going up since about 98 or whatever that is. Some sites are going down slightly, right? Some are pretty stable. All right. That's probably Wagner's Gap right there. I think that's Wagner's. Yep. And Wagner's is just a rock steady place for all of your species. All right. Enough of that. Let's go into one of my favorite human beings. This is Gene Flement, and that could be Kevin George over here asking Gene, when do you think the broadwings are coming through? This is like our guru here, and he's going to predict. Well, can you really predict when these fat little chubby birds are coming through? And the answer is everyone tries to, but we all probably fail. But what if we put numbers to these? And you'll never guess what I'm about to do. And this picture could be mine. I want to say it's mine, but it's a little too clear for the pictures I take. This is probably my partner, Janine. It's probably her broadwing, but I thought I was being careful in putting my own pictures in, but it might be Janine. So regardless, it's a really nice shot for us. And what a beautiful bird. All right. So here's what I did. And I do this with other sites, but I'll just do it for my own. I took, this is broadwing for the Allegheny Front for every September that we have data for, from 97 to 2019. I have it later. This is just an old slide. And I just take the day of the month here, and I'll put, when do we have our big day? Like you're probably thinking, you know what, there's too many numbers there. I'm getting glazed over. Well, our first lesson, let me just take this coat off, by the way. Our first lesson is, well, if you can use other tools, use them. Watch how much easier it is if I put color on here. If I put color, and then I can just look at give me the biggest day and give me the 4 days that are going to be the next biggest day. Notice 97, we didn't have a big broadwing year. Only 329 was our big day. But if you go way over here, look, we have a 7154. All right. And so that's one thing that you have to understand whenever you're looking at these graphics. The way I designed this is I'm looking for the big day, because all I want to do is I want to tell everyone when the hawks are going to be arriving at the Allegheny front. And I think all of you can see that I have no idea when they're going to arrive. I don't know when the big day is coming, right? So the colors help me a bit, but there's another lesson. Looks like I shifted these around because I call it lesson 1. Lesson 1, randomness rules our lives. So look, not everything has a pattern, all right? Natural fluctuations are just that. They're natural. Now, as the data increases, so up here, I can't really predict when the next big day is going to be. They're within some range, but I can't tell. Now, just so you know, if you go out far enough, there are some sites that can go out really far. And if you do a meta study, you can find out that over time, the broadwings are probably coming a little earlier or later. And if I'm not mistaken, Raptor Research, the journal, has a new publication about that. I think it's a year old, if I'm not mistaken. But anyhow, let me show you a different way. There's a real limitation of what I've done here. I'm going to go back just for a second. If I go back here, notice the 7154 looks the same size as 329. That is the limitation of my particular design. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a different kind of graph. This is going to be more of a cumulative graph. In other words, for each one of the broadwings that we spot, it's going to up whatever year we're counting for. Let's look at this purple. Purple's not a very good year. That was that 97. You could see these are the days of the month. Every time I get a broadwing, it bounces this up a little bit, right? Bounces up. And overall, we are done with that season really before it began. Purple's not very impressive. Compare that with this solid golden line right here. Notice we had a really big day right there from one day to the next. And then we had a couple more days where we ended up getting some broadwings. Do you see the story that tells? We had a bunch of broadwings coming in waves over the days, right? So that was back in 2018. And I do this for every year. And again, I'm just using Allegheny Front, but you can do the same thing with your site. These curves tell us stories. And in fact, these two tell really good stories. Let me go to that next slide. Notice that if you take a look here, this blue, which is 2019, was just a great year for us. Those of you that have had your great year with broadwings, you know how much fun that is. We actually had 2 days. Look, they all came at once. There's 1 day, there's 2 days. We had another couple days with a couple stragglers, and then it was off. The valve was off, right? So you can see various years. I can already play that in my head what the broadwing season was like just by looking at my graphics. Now I do think in graphs and I think in numbers. If you don't, start. It really adds to the excitement. It adds to your knowledge and your repertoire. All right, let me go back to our slide that we had before. I know it's a little small, and I just want to point out that if you go over to this site profile, we're all known as numbers. In fact, if you click on there, the very first thing that comes up is our geographic coordinates. We're numbers. Yes, we have a map down here, but that map is really coming from those numbers. Numbers are what we are really calling information. So if you're not friends with numbers, try to make friends with numbers. The world opens up. And if you're not friends with numbers, find someone that can make numbers into pictures. And numbers into pictures allow us to see stories. So let me just do one of these real quick. This is an old one I made, fall of 2018, when I was doing the analysis. The story right away is 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 pieces of this pie chart make up half of the entire Eastern Flyway in terms of how many hawk sites do we have and where are they? 16% of them are in Pennsylvania, okay? 14% in New York and so on. And then every other site has theirs. pictures with numbers. That's how you make sense of this world. Question is, why so many sites in PA? So we're going to try and answer that. I'm going to give you a hint, and this is a claim. Could it have something to do with this? Okay, that's kind of a blurry picture of a golden, but that one's definitely mine, right? I got a nice crisp wing right here, but everything else is blurred. That's definitely one of my pictures. I'm going to try and answer some of these questions. First of all, Pennsylvania is rural. We've got a lot of hunters, but I still think it's because of the golden eagles. And by the way, I have a much better picture I'm about to show you. This is one of my favorite. I took this years ago. Take a look at this eagle. That the wings of the eagle are actually straight up and down. This is down towards the earth. This is up towards the heavens. His face is still looking forward. That's a golden eagle coming off the ridge with 50-mile-an-hour winds. I just love that picture. All right, so we got our golden eagles, and I'm making a claim, so that one's not as blurry. So let's come up with some rules with working with numbers. So here's what I say. First of all, try not to be anecdotal. Everyone's got a story. Everyone's got an opinion. Let's try and make claims and try to back those claims using evidence. Our numbers, our data is our evidence. So I just said, are golden eagles the reason why so many hawk sites are in Pennsylvania? Well, let's find out. Well, first of all, let's look at the Eastern Flyway. And if I make this graphic, you'll notice that I have the distribution of all of the birds that were counted in 2020 in the fall of. And you'll notice that golden eagles, I'm looking for golden eagles. There's red tails. They make up 6%. Golden, golden, golden. I don't even see golden eagles on here. That's a problem. So I already know their values are really low. How low? I need a different graphic. Let me try a different pie. Now I'm going to use colors to my advantage. Notice I can come around here and I'm looking for golden eagles. You can't see it unless you go by colors. I don't know if you could see GE in orange here. That is the pie slice that golden eagles make up. And there's one behind it, northern goshawk. And there's two lines that are smaller. I mean, they're even more rare. So we need to keep that in mind. All right. So yeah, I don't know about this. So if I look at all of the golden eagles that were, look, I still can't see it. I just want to show you something real quick. I'm going to flip back and forth. Notice this is just 2020. All right. But I'm doing the entire Eastern Flyway on this pie graph. Now I'm going to flip this and you're barely going to notice a difference. Notice this is from 2015 through 2020. I'll flip back and forth. Do you see how they're almost the same? We get a big, we get a big bump in our broadwings, 4% difference or something like that. This is the law of large values. As the number of samples increases, the mean, i.e. the average, drifts less. And that's what we're seeing. That's why it's so important for us to have good quality data and a lot of it from as many sites as we can. All right. The larger our N value is statistically, the more we can say things with a little bit more confidence. Okay. All right. Let me go back to and make a sloppy, messier, but sometimes better type of graphic. Notice these pie pieces of pie are no longer oriented in terms of size. I want to orient them in terms of, I want to be able to see each piece of the pie and I want to see their label. There it is. Golden eagles right there, 0.4%. Okay. And that makes me think maybe my claim was anecdotal. If these golden eagles are only making up 0.4% of all the eagles we see, and we've got all these sites in Pennsylvania, and you're not going to stand out there for all this time just to see golden eagles. You're just not. All right. Now, another thing that we want to do is we always want to check ourselves. This is for, I'm seeing 0.4%. That's for 2020. Let me go back and see what the graphic is just for 2018. I'm at school, by the way. I didn't go home for this today. Anyhow, notice that I went back to 2018. And look, golden eagles right there, 0.4%. That's because it's the entire Eastern Flyway. Again, as we get more sites, we end up getting more confidence and less drift. All right, let me go on. I made a claim about maybe it's the rarity of the bird, the golden eagle. I know this is not a golden eagle. It's a beautiful bird. It was on PowerPoint slides and I had to grab it. I don't even know what it is. I don't care. It's a beautiful bird. If I was a bird, I think I'd be this bird. Okay. And just so you know, it's not a rough-legged hawk. I get that. But rough-legged hawk, if you saw one of those, it's also really exciting. Guess what I saw just a couple weeks ago? Rough-legged hawk, right? That's a big deal for me. I don't get to see rough-leggeds very often. I'm going to click back to our slide. Do you remember this 21 that I had you look at? Everyone's like, oh, 21. Look at the one right next to it. That number 1 is more exciting than anything because I rarely see rough-legged hawks. But you'll notice in my description here, I have rough-legged hawk 310, and that was a dark morph. And so that's why it's so important to put your observational notes there. I'm going to click on this so you can see a slightly different view of it. The sunlight's a little bit different. And just to give you an idea of how rare this bird is for most of us, let me go back to that pie graph. You can't even see the rough-legged. There's 26 that are counted on average from each year for the last 5 or 6 years. 26. If you see a rough-legged, consider yourself as hitting the lottery, not the big lottery, one of the smaller lottery tickets. But either way, pretty exciting. You know, so that was a real gift, and we're just not seeing them as much. All right, so one more other way to test claims is you can say, if it's the rarity of the species, most of us don't see too many black vultures. Well, some of you do, especially the coastal sites, but a lot of ridge sites, we just don't see the black vultures. And let's face it, it's just not as exciting as like a rough-legged. And so instantly I can say, you know, my claim about the rarity of the bird probably is not correct. You know, and the black vulture is a cousin of the turkey vulture, and that's one of my best shots. I love this shot. No one's really excited about my shot. It's turkey vulture. They're wonderful birds, but people just don't get excited about them. All right, new claim. Maybe it was the broad-winged hawks. Maybe that's the draw. That's it right there. That's a beautiful picture. Let's take a look. Let's see what the data says. Well, in the north region of the Eastern Flyway, 66% of all of our birds are broadwings. If I go to the mid-north, well, it makes up 37%, more than a third. Mid-Atlantic, look at that, 51%. I think this is just for 2020. And then if you're down south, 88% of the hawks that were spotted in the south region are broadwings. All right, so now let's show you a totally different way of looking at data in detail. These are called bubble graphs. If you've never made a bubble graph, they're fantastic, but there's a bigger lesson in here that I want to show you. All right, so let's take a look at this. This is all the hawk sites in the Eastern Flyway for the fall. This is for 2020. What I want to show you is total birds over here. Okay, so a hawk site that counts 14,000 birds, you'd be somewhere along that line. And the observation hours that you have. Let's say you had 500 observation hours, you're somewhere here. Look at the stories that these can tell us. If I have, look, a lot of birds, look, I got a couple thousand birds here, but not so many hours, that might already tell you a story versus a site that's way out here that counts 1,000 hours and gets like 13,000 birds. And I'm going to show you these. I'm going to populate the names here. What I want to show you is the size of the bubble. See how that bubble is bigger than that bubble? That tells you the birds per hour. So these are more advanced graphs, but there's a bigger story to this that I need to show you. Take a look at that graph. I hope everyone has a mental picture of it, because now I'm going to show you a different one. See that one? Notice they're all up top here now. See how they kind of like swoop up like this? Now I'm going to show you one more. And these are hawk sites, comparing the observation hours and total birds. I have another one right there. Question is, and I'll put all three of them side by side. You might not realize this, but these are all the same exact data. How can that be, you're wondering? How can that be? And let me just show you that what they look like when I populate them. So notice we've got Candler Mountain right here. Notice only about 7 hours, but they've got, 700 birds. Right away, that should tell you They went out for 1 day probably, or 2 days, 3.5 hours each day. And when did they probably go out? My guess is, I can already postulate, I bet you that's a broadwing site. If you go all the way over here, Wagner's Gap, notice how many hours they have. They are, 1,000 some, right? They are not just going out for broadwings. They're going from Osprey all the way through the Golden Eagle flight, right? All the way to the end of the year. So right away, you can see all of the stories that the size of the bubble tells us. Candler Mountain has much bigger bubble, right? But they're probably going for broadwings. Wagner's Gap, probably a long site in terms of dates. Let me go back and just show you how I can do this. So I'm going to go back, 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 back. Here's what you need to look for. If you're a science person, you already know this. Look at the axis: 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700. I just count upwards. 0, 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, 10,000 along the y-axis. I hope that's showing up over here. Watch what I did. All I did, and I'll go to the next slide, I made this go not 1, 2, 3, but 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. I'm doubling them. It's a logarithmic scale. Logarithmic scales can change how the shape is made on your graph. And then if I go down one more graph, notice my x-axis. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and so on. I did a logarithmic scale there. And you might be saying, why would you do that? Well, sometimes I want to be able to see them differently. This is not data manipulation, by the way. It's the same data. All scientists understand this. So when I put this in here, notice I can see down here and I can see how they're spaced out here. Now, they're all tight up here, so I might want a different view. And I understand that I can change and make a logarithmic scale, or I can take it back to a linear scale. Either way, it doesn't bother me. I can read them all the same. And just so you know, I don't leave them like this. This is how I read them. I end up putting their name, their number of hours, the total number of birds, and then the birds per hour. That's what I do. And you can see it gets messy in here. And that's why I want different views. For instance, I'll just take this and take it back to another one of my views. See how it opens it up over here? And I can tell the story right away of what's going on here. So again, kind of a neat way to do this. And I can go to a different view and I can tell what's going on for all the different sites. This is just one of the many tools that I use. And if you're wondering what red means versus green, well, if you're only counting for 4 hours a season, not as good. If you're counting for thousands of hours for a season, that's good. And if you only get like, I don't know, 2 birds here, but you're getting thousands of birds up here, that's better. So that's why I shade them green, or red to green. So that's just a system that I use. This is all to help you understand how I try to make meaning whenever I'm writing up the report. So lesson 2, the same data can be made to look different. And how you scale data changes its appearance. We get really technical about that, but if you play with it long enough, you just get it. Again, this is not manipulating data. It's the same data. It's how you display it. Be careful of this. Well, scientists know that you have to look at the axis. Not everyone's used to that. In case you haven't noticed, I'm a numbers guy. During COVID, one of my students took a screenshot of me in the middle of what I do, right? We do a lot of numbers and we make sense of numbers. And it's really what my expertise is in. Here's my newest book Bill was talking about. It's Idealized Science. It's how do we make sense with numbers and patterns and how to do science, blah, blah, blah. I was actually going to name the talk An Obsession with Data, a physicist's view of HawkCount.org, but decided not to. All right, let me start wrapping this up. Most people would puke when they see this kind of data. Don't. I'm going to zoom in on it, and I'm going to right away be able to rank. I rank everything, all the sites, so I can say something of interest. I could say, look at Hawk Mountain. They had the highest number of observation hours. I could say, look at Cape May with their sharpshins. They're #1. Greenlaw with northern goshawks. So if you ever wonder, like, how's he keeping track of that? This is how I do it. This is just pulling back the curtain. I'll skip through some of this. I want to go over one last piece that's really important in case you ever end up making these graphs. This is the observation hours for the entire Eastern Flyway for the last few years. Notice there's like a linear line here. That's what this equation is telling us. And you might be saying, I don't like equations, but I'm telling you, make friends with numbers. Watch the power that this has. I can end up saying, and by the way, I'll give you a quick lesson. Y-axis, bird numbers. X-axis, year. Click on this. I want to know what 2015 was. I could put any number in here for X. I just copied the formula. See that X? You put any year in here and it will tell you, according to this model that we've developed, how many observation hours you should think you should have. So if I put 2015 in there, I run through the algebra, I get 27,000. Boom, about 27,000. I can go backwards. I could put 2000 in here. I could put 2050 in here, and it'll tell me what this model would expect. Now I can look at the R-squared value to find out if the model has any validity, right? But I'm just trying to show how we can project and how we can look back and how we can check ourselves using these numbers. You might not be interested in the observation hours as much as I am, but let's say I want to know for our observation hours, when do they go to 0? In other words, see how this is a slight downward trend? Well, if I put, if I wanted to know when something would be 0, like the x-axis, so at year 0, if I went all the way back 2000, some years, I'd go way, way, way back there. Watch how easy it is. I'll just block out X because X would be 0 times anything. We would expect to have 226,000 observation hours. Clearly that's wrong. And that's another thing you have to be careful of. You can't just, take these numbers as truth. They're not. All right. If I wanted to know when would I expect my observation hours to go to 0, I could do the same thing. I could put a 0 in for the Y axis. That's all I'm doing here. And just solve the equation. 2288, we would expect this line to go down to 0, and we'd have no observation hours. You can tell that this is flawed right away. Look, we should have no confidence in that. We know that our current trend is not that, but these are all just tools. Let me go real quick and I'll be done. Bald eagles, DDT, we understand they've been recovering. Let me just show you what I can do with these. I can take, this is just our bald eagle numbers, and here's our equation. Notice that R-squared value, very, very strong. Means this model should be able to predict things. Let's do the same thing. Let's predict when bald eagles would have been at 0, tracing this line back. Looks like about 2000, 2005, something like that. I'm going to put my numbers in here for this bald eagle. Sorry about that. I might have been looking at the wrong slide, but I have two screens going on. So look here. I want to predict, when do these bald eagles hit 0? Well, it's really easy. I'm just going to set the y-axis to 0. I put it in there, 0, solve the equation, 2005. I'll just go back to Allegheny Fronts data just to check myself and see what we're looking at. Notice, look, we're at an all-time low, 2005. That's what I'm getting at. Just make friends with numbers. It's a great way for us to understand what's going on. I know this has been a lot, and I thank you for your patience. And there's one of our eagles that's just waking back up after this. Again, thank you very much for your patience, and I'll take any questions. How'd I do on time, Josh?
You did excellent, Brian. And that's a lot of material to go through and a little bit complex there. So I love
we said we were going to do advanced. We said
that's right. That's what we wanted. And for those of you who might have been on the first, what I'll say, intro to HawkCount about a year ago now, maybe a little more, folks were asking for a more advanced version. So that's what we had Brian put together for us. And I think he really hit the mark. And I think one of my favorite takeaways, Brian, as simple as it is if you're not friends with numbers, don't be afraid to be. Yep. So thank you for that. Now, Bill, I'll turn it to you if you have any questions that you'd like to pose for Brian.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat room. Does anyone have any questions before I jump in?
Is anyone still here after that? Okay.
We only lost one, Brian.
Okay. Well, that's not bad.
I think that's a pretty good ratio. Bill, I'm not seeing any questions currently in the chat.
No.
So I think we're in good shape there.
with some of those final slides, you talked about making some of these predictions or projections. How does what you're doing relate to some of those predictions that RPI makes?
I'm doing them for fun, and I'm just doing them as a general, like, so people can understand them. While some people are like, that's a little hard to understand. RPI is a scientifically validated system. And by the way, they correlate and correspond very well. So I'm a skeptic. I was looking at RPI, but the numbers that I'm doing are almost mimicking perfectly RPI. My numbers cannot be published, right? This is not a rigorous technique. RPI has a very, very complicated, validated, scientifically, statistically algorithm that is very powerful. And so you should always go to RPI. And just so everyone knows, on your site, you might have RPI already because we just came out with another batch of them. RPI is a little bit complicated, but they have been working very hard along with the education committee, conservation committee, trying to make it easier to read so that more people are using them. So I highly encourage you, click the button on the HawkCount.org site right next to yours, or you can go to RPI. So that is what we want people to start using, is RPI.
Do you want to spend the next, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours telling us the difference between your simple linear regression approach and the Bayesian approach that RPI uses?
At the 2018 conference up in Detroit, I did that very thing. I took quite some time, but the point was, look, if people are being scared off of this, please, let's just show them the end results and why they should have confidence in these. We need people to understand this RPI, and what HMANA does is we are offering complementary data to some of the birding bird surveys and things of that nature. But if that's all you're using, like for instance, let me just go back to this picture. Oh, that's a bald. I thought I had a golden handy, but our golden eagles, in Pennsylvania, I've said this a million times. If you think, well, we don't have golden eagles because they don't breed here, you're wrong. We have golden eagles for about 6 months of the year. They just happen to be migrating through. Imagine if you didn't take that into account. You would never know that we have golden eagles. You know what I mean? So RPI is one of the flagship processes that HMANA uses to get data out there to whoever needs to use it.
See, we have Ricardo, I guess. His question, hopefully I get it right. What about seeing the bubbles into maps on a per year basis?
Those were per year. Each one of those bubble graphs, let me go back, blah, blah, blah. By the way, it took me a long time. There we go. So let's take a look at these. This is just for the 2020 season. And all I'm doing there is I'm looking to see, look at Rockfish Gap right away. I know Rockfish Gap because I've seen their numbers before. I know they suddenly had a massive, massive jump. They had the biggest, craziest broadwing season. I think it was, 2020. They had the most broadwings in the Eastern Flyway. So just a great day for them.
Well, I might be getting it wrong. My interpretation of the question, the bubbles here indicate, the bigger the bubble, the more birds per hour.
Yep.
Maybe he's asking, I think it's a he, could those bubbles be birds per year?
Oh, yeah. But you can already see the bird. This is the total birds here. But yeah, we could easily do that. And that's the thing. Once you set up a program, just start playing around. Anyone can make something like this on Excel. You could just go in and highlight a different column, and then you've got whatever you want. So it's almost like a hobby. I know that sounds funny. Like, why would anyone sit down? But if you talk to hawk watchers, we all chat about those numbers, right? It's just like people open up the sports page and they read stats of their favorite player. I think we kind of do that with birds. Why don't we have the graphics? Why don't we have the numbers on hand? Maybe we need our own page in, dare I say, a printed newspaper, right? Where people could sit down. I know it's gone.
Paper's gross, Brian.
I know. I'm an old school guy. What can I say?
Hey, so he did further clarify. He's thinking more along the lines of placing those dots on an actual map to show it at what he's calling a territorial level.
This is my kind of person right there that says, nice work. but why don't you put it on something useful like a map, right? That's fantastic, right? And now when I'm done with the Eastern Flyway report, I know how I don't know if any of you go down these rabbit holes, you start playing, and the next thing you know, it's 2 weeks later and you haven't seen your kids, and you're thinking, well, I got this new map, right? And then, so that would be a great one. That would be a great one.
Might be a possible connection there too, Brian. He's interested in possibly a similar analysis for Veracruz. So I thought maybe you and maybe Dr. Goodrich might have a good opportunity there.
Yeah. My email, wargo@HMANA.org, right? Just give me an email. Although right after this, I got to, those of you that know Carolyn Hoffman, she sets the date for the Eastern Flyway report. And, all I can ever hear is Carolyn in my ear. She's not actually doing it, but just saying the date. It's coming up, Brian. You know what I mean? So after that, I can play with more numbers.
Sounds
but
good.
I got to get the report written.
All right, Bill, back over to you. Sorry.
I don't see any more questions coming up. Josh just posted in the chat room Brian's email. Any other final questions? We're just about out of time.
Brian, go ahead and go to that last slide for us. Okay. No more questions, Bill?
I don't see any.
All right. Well, we just really want to echo our appreciation to Brian for putting this together. Brian, just for your awareness, several comments in the chat talking about what a great presentation it was. So I think you had some data geeks really interested in watching in. So thanks so much for all the time you put to making this happen for us. Really much appreciated. And from a HMANA perspective, remember these programs don't happen without you. So please, think about donating and supporting HMANA financially so we can keep these going. And we're excited to have quite a lineup in place through what looks to be possibly even September for Lunch and Learns. And next month, we hope to have an intern from Hawk Mountain speak about eagle telemetry work that's being done in Argentina. So that's going to be one you won't want to miss. So more information coming on that, and we'll have that out via our e-news, through email, as well as on Facebook. So keep an eye out for that registration link. And thank you again.
And thank you, Josh, for doing a great job. This goes so smooth. People think that just happens. It does not just happen. Josh sets this up and he makes you practice, and he does a great job. So you're such an asset to our board. So thank you again, Josh.
Well, thank you very much, Brian.
And Bill, thank you.